everyone. Welcome to the Damage Report. This is Johnny DeRolla. It's Friday. It's still locked down. It's almost been 100 days. And you know what it feels like it's been? Almost 100 days. How's it going, Brett?
It's all right, John. I have noticed, this is the first time I've seen it from you, but from Anna previously, I saw just a defeatedness embedded. Yesterday, I think it was on the show or maybe it was Wednesday, where it started with this low energy. I would say that today is Juneteenth, emancipation, hopefulness. Let's try to give it the honor it deserves, and I think we need to help you. So let me help you make it through today.
Thank you.
In a positive way, trying to find the silver linings and hope in all of it. There have been some developments that are good in the news.
That's true.
And some ridiculous people being ridiculous that we can also expose. And I will say that, today is better than most Fridays because instead of Happy Half Hour, there is a multi-hour Juneteenth special that you can watch on the Young Turks.
That is.
So you will get actual programming as opposed to the nonsense that I typically bring.
Exactly.
On Friday.
If you want Brett's nonsense, keep watching. But yes, Brett is alluding to our TYT Juneteenth special, which will be happening at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time, streaming publicly on TYT.com, YouTube, and Twitch, twitch.tv/TYT. And there you'll see Cenk Uygur joined by Ida Rodriguez, Alonzo Bowden, Benjamin Dixon, Adrian Lawrence, J.R. Jackson, and Jason Carter. It's like the biggest panel ever, and it should be an awesome special. So definitely tune into that. Brett, you're right. There is a little bit of good news. What passes for good news that we're going to talk about. And if you bring even 20% the positivity that you just said that you would, then we're going to be okay. And of course, we'll be closing out the episode with Garbage People, which should be fun. I've got my garbage ready right here to toss into the can. Everyone who has already joined us in the chat room, thank you very much for being here. Please hit the like button, share the stream, all of that. You can tweet it. You can TikTok it. I don't know. Maybe have it say TDR's live on Twitch and YouTube and you pointed it. That's what they do, right? Do that. That would be helpful. And with that, Brett, why don't we jump into this packed show, starting off with breaking news. Breaking news, after more than 3 months of people calling for really anything approaching even something like justice in the tragic killing of Breonna Taylor, we have found out that this morning, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher says that Brett Hankison, one of the police officers involved in that shooting, has been fired. And that's good news. But it's one of the cops has been fired, and that's it. And it took 3 months of nation. I know, Brett. It seems crazy at this point. It's breaking news and it's good news, and so we're saying it, but it took almost 100 days of nationwide protest to get one cop fired.
Just 1/3 of half of what I asked for happened.
Exactly. And
so I'm choked up, as you can see.
No, obviously we're choked up because it's incredibly serious. I'm assuming at this point that people know the details of the case, but she's a 26-year-old black woman who was killed while doing absolutely nothing wrong in her own home as a result of a no-knock warrant that never should have been initiated in the first place. But that's the good news. It seems weird.
I will say this. I'm a little shocked that this happened because I read the incident report, and I can't believe they have enough to fire this guy because according to the incident report that they wrote, nothing happened. So that's going to be a tough one to back. I just go by the evidence that's produced by unbiased sources within police departments, and it's just strange that they're able to do it. Here's my favorite quote about what has happened from Mayor Greg Fisher of the Louisville metro area. He said, unfortunately, due to a provision in state law that I would very much like to see changed, both the chief and I are precluded from talking about what brought us to this moment or even the timing of this decision. So it's also like a, a sad testament, but I want to be hopeful today. So it is a testament to the movement itself. It's sad that it takes this many people this long to get this little. But
Yeah.
it's also like he can't even talk about why or how he got there. But that's one law going against justice in this case. And it took him this long, and he can't talk about it. And an incident report that is empty, but they fired a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like and the reason for it is because of people out in the streets rightfully pointing out that this should never have happened. And this is the guy that, quote, blindly shot 10 rounds. And that's what they mentioned when they fired him.
Exactly. And yeah, like they say, we can't talk about what led us to this decision. I'm imagining there's some context from around the country. But again, 3 months. And that incident report where her injuries were listed as none, no injuries. Someone should be fired over that. What is that? How do you submit that and think... Well, the entire country is laser focused on what we're doing and not doing in this case, so it should be fine that we're going to list her as not being injured after we shot her multiple times.
Yeah.
Insane.
I mean, right now, I'm just going back to, like, we're paying for this. Like, we paid for this. And if there's one thing I think that Republicans can get behind, it's stop wasting my tax dollars on terrible, terrible government waste. And that's what this aspect of the police department is. They paid someone to make that report that had nothing in it. I mean, all the other obvious issues aside, but like at the very least, can you come around with me on that? We paid for someone to go into go into the house where this woman was just sleeping, not tell anyone who you are, by law, not having to do that, not knocking and just shooting.
Yeah.
Come on.
Absolutely insane. Well, that's the breaking news. We'll see what else comes. I can say that based on my viewing of social media, the reaction has been what you would expect. That seriously, this is what you're giving people. One cop has been fired after 3 months of drawing a salary while not having to work, and others are still out there and literally nothing has happened.
I always think of like The Wire, where they're like, "You're gonna have to take the fall. Sorry, you're gonna have to take this one."
Maybe, but man. Imagine sitting in a room. Let's say that is the plan, thinking that'll work. Today is Juneteenth, and because, for a combination of reasons, many Americans still don't know much about this holiday, and because of the context of the protests that are going around the country, there's a chance that this might be the breakthrough moment where more predominantly white Americans will finally learn what this holiday is about. And I'm particularly calling out the president, who apparently had no idea what it was as of about 72 hours ago. We thought we would just go over a little bit of information about this holiday and some of what's being done in regard to it this year. So Juneteenth, also known as Emancipation Day, Black Independence Day, or Jubilee Day, celebrates the end of slavery after the Civil War, although President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had legally accomplished that within the Confederacy more than 2 years earlier. It was on June 19th, 1865, that Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced the end of the Civil War and of slavery. So it's marking the end, but it's also drawing focus to the fact that even once all of this had been done, it still persisted. It was still clung because people were so desperate to maintain this barbaric system that it took multiple years for it to actually be ended in fact, let alone all of what happened basically the exact same time to basically create slavery anew in a new form. But basically it marks that. And despite the fact that, that was a very long time ago, it began as a Texas holiday in 1980. It is now recognized by 47 states and the District of Columbia as a state holiday or observance, and is marking its 155th anniversary this year. But it's still not taught in most schools, nor is the event a federal holiday, despite decades of pushing from activists. And one would imagine that if you were to think about philosophically what national federal holidays are for, sort of commemorating important events, hypothetically, the ending of slavery seems like it more than meets that criteria.
But John, you would have to be proud of it.
That's true.
To celebrate it. And I don't think there are a lot of people, particularly in certain regions of the country, who are happy that that happened. So it would be tough for them to celebrate it.
That's true.
But let's just give people the day off, man. Give them the day off, and that is the kind of incentivization for people to appreciate and enjoy something that's needed. I mean, that's why I love Christmas as a Hebrew. I love Christmas because they always gave me 2 weeks off. So maybe that's the kind of positive Pavlovian reinforcement that we need to give racists, to be like, well, at least you get the day off.
Well, yes, fine.
These are jokes,
also,
John.
I understand that. Hypothetically, let's also learn about it. Let's take it as a moment to acknowledge the formal, or I guess the effective end of slavery, but also to talk about and teach and make sure that people understand what slavery is actually like, especially as we are in the midst of a multi-decades-long effort by the right to sort of rewrite what slavery was, why it existed, why whites fought to maintain it, what the relationship between slaves and those who brutalized them actually were. All of that is going on. None of that counts as propaganda to the right. Any effort, which hopefully is coming, to make sure that kids around the country learn about Juneteenth and about slavery will almost certainly be branded as propaganda. But that fight needs to be had.
At the same time, those people who would fight against Juneteenth's celebration as propaganda are also fighting tooth and nail to save statues of the Confederacy and names on bases which are explicitly propaganda and then Trump had the nerve the other day, maybe yesterday, to say that that I want to get the term right, but he said that the Confederate monuments are symbols of healing, I believe is what he said. No, the actual propaganda that is trying to push people down who were the victims of slavery, and then also prop people up who are the ones who just won't let a 5-year failed campaign of independence go, that fought for slavery. Those are the people that it's intended to prop up. Why can't we just celebrate the good things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so someone in the comments asked, what are those 3 states that don't have it as a holiday? So those are Hawaii, North Dakota, and South Dakota, that as of right now do not. I guess it's possible that, with the focus that we have on these sorts of issues, maybe something could be done on the state level there to make it a holiday. I do know that as of this morning, Senate Democrats introduced legislation to make it a national holiday federally, so across the country. Doesn't seem like it'd be controversial, but this is America and it's 2020, so I have a feeling it's probably not going to go far, as ridiculous and insane as that is.
Right. The other day, Swalwell tried to get Gates to just say the words Black Lives Matter, and he wouldn't. He wouldn't say it.
Yep.
He had to go straight to All Lives Matter. It's these things where that the right thinks is a victory for them, but I can't believe that there are souls in the United States who don't think it makes them look completely stupid and, to a non-zero extent, evil.
Yeah. Gates and them, they are extremists, and they are captured by even more radical extremists, where Gates knows, and he's being pragmatic. Were he to simply look into the camera and say Black Lives Matter, he would be primaried, and that would be used against him in a probably very effective ad in a Republican primary.
And at the same time, Tucker Carlson says that it's the left that is the thought police, that won't let you say things, that is policing what you say rhetorically.
Exactly. So anyway, it's likely that, especially if someone watching this is from outside of the U.S., but even if you grew up in vast portions of the U.S., you probably don't know much about this holiday. But certainly, take this as an opportunity to go and learn more. And I say that, sort of alluded to this in the beginning, partially because there are a lot of people, even in incredibly prominent positions in this country, that don't know about it.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called The Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful.
But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Donald Trump recently had an interview with the Wall Street Journal, and one of the quotes from it that made my blood boil was this, that he had to say about Juneteenth and his original plan to host his Tulsa rally on Juneteenth at the site of a horrendous mass murder against black individuals in Tulsa. He had this to say: "I did something good. I made Juneteenth very famous. It's actually an important event, an important time, but nobody had ever heard of it." And we are several years now into the Trump thing, and I think we all know exactly what that means. He had never heard of it.
That's it. He had never heard of it. He, not a dictator, but uses the royal we.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, no, the plural, no one had ever heard of it.
Yeah.
And then think about the context under which people have heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they heard of it is because you decided to hold a Trump rally on the site of one of the biggest racial atrocities in American history on Juneteenth, on Emancipation Day. And everyone called you out for it. And not only that, you admitted to the implicit and, in many cases, explicit racism inherent in a Trump rally by, out of respect, because you were pressured into it, moving it to a different day. That was an admission that he absolutely exists to foment racial hatred of whites against pretty much everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, I see some people in the comments saying that they just learned about Juneteenth either this year or last year or a few years ago. That's totally fine. The ignorance is not that surprising. For me, too. I don't remember what year it was that I learned about it, but it wasn't 20 years ago. And that is because so much of American history is not taught selectively to hide certain aspects of what our country is and was. Trump, though, has been president for literally years. He has been president for multiple Juneteenths already, and clearly, from that quote, has no idea what it was. This is one of the simplest ways to translate Trump speak. When he says that nobody has ever heard of this, or more than anyone had ever imagined, he is only talking about himself because he views the universe as only existing inside of his dome. That's it.
Donnie solipsism.
Exactly. Perhaps worse, though, I will just add on, now after blowback and criticism, they moved the rally, not outside of Tulsa, which they should have done, but one day back. So they did do that, and we can expect that there are probably going to be protests. And here is what he had to say today. Any protesters, anarchists, agitators, looters, or lowlifes who are going to Oklahoma, please understand, you will not be treated like you have been in New York, Seattle, or Minneapolis. It will be a much different scene. And we know all of what he said in the initial weeks of the protests. The dog whistle of the looters or lowlifes from Trump, and the clear threat there to use deadly violence. And by the way, we have seen how the protesters were treated in New York, Seattle, or Minneapolis. They were at many times brutalized.
Maybe that's what he's talking about. Maybe he's saying you guys won't get run over by SUVs. Maybe he's saying you guys won't be indiscriminately pepper sprayed out of moving vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what he means.
Maybe it's, I will be polite and respectful, but probably not. And so you have him scheduling the rally for Juneteenth originally in Tulsa. He moves it, and I'm still curious exactly why that decision was made. I'm that's such an interesting choice. But then, like, whatever credit he would be given for responding to the criticism by moving the rally, then promising to brutalize protesters, doesn't deserve any of it.
No, that's
absolutely none of it.
And that's the President of the United States. Like, what? That's the President of the United States doing that. And then going, law and order, and tweeting during some kind of, there was an event that he had where he was at a table and he's just like firing off tweets in the middle of this press event.
Yeah.
He's a nightmare. And that's the problem. I mean, in the main show meeting, it was like there was so much that was terrible that we could cover about what the President of the United States has done. The conversations we're having about what to cover is deciding between whether the president is a Nazi, like when the president affiliates himself with Nazis, and when the president is doing some other thing like threatening protesters with violence.
Yeah. Yeah, the process of choosing stories has become absolute madness. Like, yeah, you're alluding to the Nazi symbol in the ad thing, right? Yeah, so we didn't end up talking about that. But we could have, and like maybe should have. I mean, the entire thing of trying to put together a rundown now is, like, to what extent is putting a spotlight on the clear calls to neo-Nazis, white supremacists, domestic terrorists, all of that. To what extent is it doing their job of making sure that all of them know about it, versus how can we just stand by and let this continue and not say anything about it?
Yeah. On this show, it's like, do I have to debunk this, or is it too obvious?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rough. It's so stupid. And like yesterday, it was like we listed so many things in Bolton's book that were terrible about Donald Trump. We didn't even mention, and we're probably going to say it today, but like Trump's like, yeah, build concentration camps for Uyghurs, for Muslims. Do it.
Yeah,
Go ahead, do it.
We did talk about that on TDR yesterday. Because how can you not? Even though, again, like the source...
Sorry, there were 15 other horrible things.
100%. And one of the horrible things is we're in a position where things are so bad in America in 2020 that our best hope is that John Bolton gives us an inside look at this insane regime. Donald Trump had an interview with Politico, and in it, he was actually surprisingly candid about some of his fears going into this election. And in this, he sort of delved into one of the topics that he's talked about quite often over the past few months, and that is the right-wing fear over the rise of mail-in voting. With Trump saying, my biggest risk is that we don't win lawsuits. And there he's referring to lawsuits to try to stop mail-in voting from happening or expanding. He says, we have many lawsuits going all over, and if we don't win those lawsuits, I think it puts the election at risk. Now, Trump was asked a two-part question during the interview. The first part, would a substantial amount of mail-in voting, which is widely expected because of coronavirus, cause him to question the legitimacy of the election? And would he accept the results no matter what? To that he said, well, you can never answer the second question, right? Because Hillary kept talking about she's going to accept, and she never accepted it. You know, she lost too. She lost good. Of course, Clinton conceded the day after the 2016 election, accepting it instantaneously. But there he's referring to Obamagate or Pizzagate or whatever. I don't know. Something about a coup. But anyway, so we've got there whether he would actually accept it, but also what does he think about an expansion of voting, Brett?
He doesn't want anyone to vote.
Mm-hmm.
He has admitted just as much by saying it on Fox and Friends, if Democrats were able to vote, then you'd never see a Republican win another election. He doesn't want people to vote. It is very obvious that he is trying all things at all times without any strategy, and that's worked well for him. Mm-hmm. He just wants to kick up as much dust and confusion, and then he sets up shop in the fog of nonsense.
Mm-hmm. You know,
and that's this, yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. He needs the fog of nonsense. And that's why when he says things that seem definitive, I always want to just tell people to pump the brakes a little bit. Because you just saw his response there to would he accept it? And he's implying that no, there are some circumstances under which he would not accept it. Which is why, like a week ago, when he said to Harris Faulkner, certainly if I don't win, I don't win. If you don't win, you go on, you do other things. And everyone's like, he said it. He said it. He'll accept the election results. And I'm like, yeah, and he also accepted the coronavirus death counts until he didn't. And he doesn't have to be consistent. He can change it. He could say, my name is and never was Donald Trump. It's never been Donald Trump. And all of his fans would be like, yeah. His name's Javier Bardem. I know. It's whatever he says it is. It doesn't matter.
But that's it. But that is the key, man. That's the key that unlocks decoding Donald Trump. You said one thing is when it's a way to translate. If he says no one ever knew that, it just means he didn't know it. Mm-hmm. But the only thing he wants is to be talked about and in a position of power. He just wants to be the most famous, most powerful person in the world. And that's what drives everyone. And that's the same decoder ring that unlocks his supporters, because you and I want things to make sense. And and they don't care about that. They just want to be in control. And they will do anything at any time to ensure that they have control. And that's why they hate movements like Black Lives Matter, because it seeks to create equality. Mm-hmm. And equality would create a situation that was fair. And a fair situation means the people who make the most arguments, the best arguments, and make the most sense, and have the most skill, talent, ability, end up succeeding. They don't want that. Because they like it right now. They like that they don't have to be special in order to have power.
Yeah.
They don't have to have any discernible skills or ability. They just have it. And they don't want to give it up. And I understand that impulse. It's just not right or fair. And I guess it's like good work if you can get it. But the more time passes, the more it becomes clear that a lot of folks out there have had enough of it. And they're in the streets right now telling you as much.
Exactly. And one of the reasons I wanted to cover this is I think that, to the extent that we can arm people with accurate information, that is a worthwhile goal. And so I will say, as I've said many times, I will say again, you just talked about wanting to set up a system with fairness and equality. Mail-in voting is that system because, again, there is no evidence that an expansion of mail-in voting benefits either party.
But it's
and
not
they have
even
done studies. What? No, I understand it's not
all
about
of
that.
these.
This has nothing to do. This isn't going to convince him or whatever. I just want our audience to know that an expansion of mail-in voting is not biased in some sense in a partisan fashion. It increases overall turnout. That should be a good that we can all agree on.
I would say, and this is, I don't have anything to back this up, but it's just everything I've ever studied about voting is the more ways and times there are to vote, yes, it does. An any and all strategy is going to increase the franchise, which will, be democracy. Even in our limited version that we have, like the Electoral College and such, which makes it so weird that you can see like Biden with a 15-point lead nationally. And then it's like, because 8 states are toss-ups, it's not a given.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that's nuts. Anyways, it's just frustrating, man. Mm-hmm. It's just very, very frustrating.
The entire thing. And one of the reasons I wanted to mention this too is that I'm trying not to focus too much, especially considering all that's going on the election or Donald Trump, what he might or might not do, particularly because we just don't know. But I know that our audience, a lot of people in our audience are worried about it. I am worried about it too. It is on my mind. We don't talk about it a ton, but it is there. In case you had briefly been able to forget, not have front and center in your mind that 2020 is the absolute worst time, take a look at this video that the President of the United States, the most singularly powerful individual on our planet, tweeted this.
As a person who has made videos, in the style of parody and satire, it works better if you use something that was real to prove your point, not something you made up to prove your point. Use actual clips in their original context to underscore an argument, not a fake, misspelled lower third toddler, non-CNN video to make your point, which is a bad point and poorly timed, as I'm sure you'll get into.
Yeah. It's a million stupid layers in this stupid parfait.
Everybody loves parfaits.
They do.
Not that one.
So, look, let me just say, as many people, like, I believe that our audience is pretty savvy. So when I play a video like this, I know that they will have already seen the video and thought about it at multiple levels. And so I get everything. I get the different stacked up things where on the first level, it's the president being fooled into showing a video that's not actually true. On the second level, it's, look at you guys getting mad at the president for sharing a video. Haha, the joke's actually that you get offended by things. The third level is that he's attacking fake news, but also it is fake news that he's spreading, with the layer on top of that being they will post something so obviously fake that it will be the only thing that can rise to the level of Twitter flagging it, so that they can then complain about it being flagged, even though what they posted was manipulated. So my only response is, what I think the only reasonable response is, screw literally everything about the world that we live in. Because I just hate all of it. Especially when all of the people, including the moron who made the video, the idiot who tweeted the video, all of them believe that secretly, even though they have to pretend for comedic reasons to be morons, they believe that secretly they're more intelligent than us, more logical than us, more serious than us. That video, and Trump tweeting it, is the Republican populist strategy. What Republicanism actually is white supremacy and passing tax cuts. But this is what they actually have. This is the Michael Knowles and the Ben Shapiros and the Dave Rubins and all of that. It's encapsulated in this moronic incident.
And I don't know if this is just me, but I don't think it is just me. Before this video of a white person running behind a black person, tweeted by Donald Trump, mentioned by Donald Trump. The previous video involving Donald Trump's thoughts on a video of a white person running after a black person was Rayshard Brooks. And Donald Trump himself characterized what was happening in that video to put the blame on Rayshard Brooks for getting killed. So most recently, the closest thing to that, to the fakeifying a actual video, is Donald Trump. He was the one who most recently did something like that. And it just makes me absolutely sick that we're going to have, on Juneteenth, probably 25 tweets from Donald Trump that are going to go counter to what Juneteenth sought to, was evidence of having accomplished. And that's what's sick. It's so sick and it's so stupid.
The entire thing is so, like, I guess on some level I understand that America has literally never been two sides in disagreement, but intellectually honest and serious and not acting in bad faith, letting their ideas do battle for them. That's never been the case. But I really do believe that we've never been farther from that than we are right now, where it's all BS. Literally everything. It's like George Carlin said. It's all BS and it's bad for you. That's all that American politics is. And by the way, here's one of the things that makes me the most angry about this entire thing. So he tweets that video. I don't care which level you're currently analyzing it at in the BS meter. But anyway, it's made up. They know that it's made up. So Twitter flags it. And when they flag it, what that means is that below the video, there's a little blue thing that says manipulated video. It doesn't stop you from seeing it, doesn't stop you from watching it. It's just that little thing. And as of when I clipped this out, when I took the shot of it, right here, it had 198,000 retweets. absolute BS. And again, I don't care what level of BS a person
But
understands it to
also-
be. They're all
but-
BS.
But they're throwing a fit about what they consider to be censorship of this tweet when it's not censorship.
Mm-hmm.
There's no censored sign. There's nothing preventing this from getting anywhere. Meanwhile, the President of the United States is simultaneously suing his niece for writing a book.
Yeah.
And using the full force of the Justice Department of the United States of America to stop a book from coming out.
Yep.
To actually censor a book, which itself has already been censored by the government to force it to omit certain things it deems classified unequivocally for convenience and face-saving sake. That's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now. And at the same time, oh my God, my baby president, he doesn't want to get censored. They put a little bumper on the bottom of the pool. I put bumper. We can't manipulate the media. I'm scared.
Yeah. Putting the label.
That's the faux outrage. And then let's compare the two outrages happening in America right now.
Mm-hmm.
The one outrage is from people in the streets showing you times when people were murdered by law enforcement, showing you undoctored video of law enforcement. That's one outrage. The other level of the other side's outrage is, but there's a little blue dot underneath my president's video. You're censoring me. Those are not the same. Those are not the same.
They're not the same. It's obviously not a violation of his First Amendment rights. Even if they took down the post, even if they banned him from the platform, that would not be a violation of his First Amendment rights because that's not what the First Amendment's actually about. Right. And some of the First Amendment warriors don't know that. Some know but pretend that they don't. And they complain about the like you just said, the babbling baby voice. But at the same time, they don't actually mind it being there. Dave Rubin doesn't actually want you to not burn his book. He desperately wants you to burn his book. And that's why it reaches a level of BS that I just don't care anymore. You have to get it out of power. That's all. There's no trying to have a debate. Like, let's get one of these fundamental liars on a stage with me, and I'll show that they're wrong about the First Amendment. They don't care. They're not trying to be right. They're trying to have power, and they do have power. That's the thing. This is not something where we're going to beat them out factually. They're a galaxy away from the facts, and they don't care how the distance is growing. They have political power. Take it away from them.
How?
By winning the election, theoretically. At least that would get some of them out. It's not going to stop Donald Trump from being able to get 200,000 retweets on an absolutely BS video, but at least he won't be able to appoint judges. That would be something. Joe Biden's VP search continues, but as of last night, there's one less name being looked at, and that is Amy Klobuchar, who had this to say on Lawrence O'Donnell.
I have never, as you probably know, on many, many shows since I endorsed the vice president on that joyful night in Dallas, I've never commented on this process at all. But let me tell you this, after what I've seen in my state, what I've seen across the country, this is a historic moment, and America must seize on this moment. And I truly believe, as I actually told the vice president last night when I called him, that I think this is a moment to put a woman of color on that ticket. And there are so many incredibly qualified women. But if you want to heal this nation right now, my party, yes, but our nation, this is sure a hell of a way to do it. And that's just what I think after being through this in my state.
Okay, so that is Amy Klobuchar saying that she is pulling out, and also Biden should pick a woman of color to be his running mate. Thoughts?
Okay. Sure, I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that are happening are, one, she wasn't going to get it anyway. What she's saying when she's volunteering this, it might have been we'll give you the opportunity to volunteer your way out of this, but we're not picking you anyway, so you can present it however you want to Lawrence O'Donnell. That said, it still looked like it killed her to say it, because there are all those moments where she's like signing her name, Vice President Klobuchar, and then she has to crumple those up and throw them in the trash. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's happening is her looking at Elizabeth Warren and going, "You too." Mm-hmm. Neither of us. And congratulations to Kamala Harris, really.
Yeah. I know that's exactly the first few thoughts that I had, that a lot of people, and the thing is, I think it's a not terrible strategy, if those are your goals, is to look like it was your decision rather than that you weren't going to get picked. And honestly, I'm enough in a bubble that has nothing to do with Amy Klobuchar that I have no idea how likely she was to be picked. It seems like a crazy pick to me that would do virtually nothing to increase his odds of winning, but I could be wrong. Maybe strong Biden fans really do like Klobuchar, so I'm willing to admit.
I think at this point they don't think that Minnesota's is a problem. I mean, it might be because it's so polarizing, but I think they had Minnesota. It's looking at these polls. Yeah. They're thinking more like Ohio, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, specifically that, and Michigan's got to be his. Are you kidding me? But we'll there's see that
debates, but yeah. And the thing is, like, as much as I don't agree with Amy Klobuchar in much. I think he should pick a woman of color. I just very much disagree about who it should be. Probably.
But specifically with Amy Klobuchar, like, that ad writes itself. Amid all, Joe Biden says he's for Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, he picked a vice presidential running mate who didn't prosecute the guy who killed George Floyd.
Yeah. That would be terrible and accurate. And by the way, in terms of like the sort of like set, like she effectively like. I don't know what the analogy is, but she set herself and him on fire. It was very much like a Faramir moment from Return of the King. Like,
and
she
who on
took
fire?
them both out.
Warren,
yeah. Klobuchar and Warren. And the thing is, like, I'm totally fine with that. Not for the same reason as a lot of people on Twitter. I'm one of those people who doesn't hate Warren. Like, there are people who like you just choose like Joe Manchin instead of Warren. I'm not one of those people, but I don't think Warren necessarily has to be the nominee, and I think it makes it more sense for her to remain in the Senate. Choose a woman of color. There's some amazing progressive women of color. You can choose Barbara Lee or Nina Turner. I know that they never would, but those are considerations that they can make.
I think they're going to pick Kamala Harris, and it actually provides some kind of cover when you're trying to in the face of abolish the police, because she stood toe-to-toe with Meghan McCain and defended tenets of the Black Lives Matter movement and the defund the police movement, explained them well, while at the same time being an attorney general who was in charge of prosecutions for the entire state of California.
Yeah, I think that's the direction it's moving. I think that there's still a chance of Stacey Abrams, but I think in the end they will probably end up going with Harris. Although the other ads then write themselves based on their interactions on the debate stage. So we'll see. Anyway, really fast, I want to give you Joe Biden's reaction to what Klobuchar said. He tweeted, "Amy, from the moment you announced you were running for president in a snowstorm," he had to mention it because she has 1,000 times over the course of the election. He says, "It wasn't hard to see you had the grit and determination to do anything you set your mind to. You know how to get things done. With your help, we're going to beat Donald Trump." And sure, I mean, to the extent that he needs her help in that state, she can still provide it as a surrogate for him and all of that.
And she will.
And again, at the end of the day, we don't really have all that much evidence that VPs are super important, even for winning their own state. Maybe then, who knows? I am assuming at this point that in the upcoming New York primaries, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez probably does not have much to worry about in her primary, but she still is running actively, and so she has an ad that I want to show you, not only because I think it's a great demonstration of how to communicate about the core issues that should be driving virtually every Democratic candidate right now, but also she's encouraging people to get out there and vote, where they can vote for her, but also potentially support other candidates too if they're not in her district. So here is that ad.
Right now, New York is experiencing 3 concurrent crises. Crisis of health with COVID-19, the economic crisis of mass unemployment, and the crisis of racism in our systems of law enforcement.
crisis in New York reaching a critical mass.
All three of these crises has something crucial in common. They haven't presented us new problems, but they've set on fire existing ones. But what if these broken systems weren't built to last in the first place? What if a better world is possible?
These are systemic problems, and I'm proud to have been fighting for systemic solutions.
Like Medicare for all, a federal jobs guarantee, and the end to mass incarceration.
Today is a big day for people who have been left behind.
People are coming together in an unprecedented movement to build this better future and a better world. And whether it's delivering thousands of groceries to our neighbors, introducing transformative legislation, or standing up to corrupt interests in Washington, it has been the honor of my life to fight for the Bronx and Queens in the halls of Congress. And we're just getting started. It's time to bring the movement to the voting booth.
And that's why I'm asking for your vote on June 23rd.
Brett?
I am a cynical bastard, so you go first.
Okay, so I will say...
I can't appreciate warm-heartedness.
You can't appreciate warm-heartedness? Well,
but it's a me problem. It's not a her problem.
You're going to have an issue with AOC for the most part, not just in her ads. But yeah, it showed empathy. Like, the reason I said it's a great way to communicate the way that candidates should be running is that it not only mentions the most important issues, it provides solutions for them while also stressing the values that drive those solutions. And at the same time, like, looking incredibly cinematic. Geez, I don't know what team put that together, but they sure know what they're doing.
They sure know how to motion track. They sure there's a lot of little X's on TV screens, and that's what I looked at. So I can't. That's why I say I can't like appreciate warm-heartedness. I look at it and go like, okay, cool. That's our walk and talk. I'm sure they have a few. Sorry, let me wait for the motorcade of Harleys to pass. But like, I'm sure they were like, all right, let's do one where you look at the camera the whole time as you walk by, and then another one where you finish and you turn.
Okay, well,
and then let me put like the film hole on the side, the like 8mm film.
No, this sort of cynicism will not be allowed. I'm cutting you out of the frame.
I know. I'm sorry.
So anyway.
I can't not, but I like it. It seemed super like communist. Like, here's food. Like, that's all my stuff when I watch.
That's how she spent the pandemic, is organizing help for people in terms of food.
I'm not the person to have on this. I like her. I remember 2 years ago today when she like was running up the stairs so that she could appear on your show, and we Skyped her in. I remember that. It was all warm-hearted stuff, and I like her and I support her. And it is a empirically well-made ad for all the reasons you say, despite my terribleness as a human being.
Okay. Good. Let's acknowledge that at the end. Yes. No, I think one of the things I noticed while he was noticing the X's and things like that, you know what I was noticing? People were wearing masks. Just, I'm very glad anytime I see it, because I don't know about you watching this video right now, but as I go around LA, it has become rarer. There are still some people. I do still see some people in masks. And as of last night, actually, California is like requiring it across the entirety of the state. But it's become rare. And when I'm looking at these numbers going up in different states, it's scary. So I'm glad that she's being responsible by making sure that in her advertisement, she's stressing that while showing footage of her and her team dealing with the fallout of the pandemic in one of the areas of the world hardest hit by it. And so it's obviously an incredibly serious and important issue anywhere, but there perhaps more than anything. And so, I'm glad, especially for New York, that they have a representative that can be counted on to actually take it seriously, especially because there is very much the chance of a second wave coming. Future pandemics, there's no reason to believe that they won't hit New York hard the second time. We need the right people, and so I'm glad that she's stressing that, while also tying it into, again, solutions like Medicare for all and things like that.
Yeah, and there's hopefully about to be another representative in New York fighting for that, Jamal Bowman, who is up 10 in a recent poll. Oh my God, that's the one I want so bad. That's the one this cycle. There's a bunch of others, and I've wanted some that didn't end up panning out, like Morgan Harper and all that. But like this one, I'm just like, Yeah, and this is the one where I'm just like, but this one's doable, and this one is progress, and this one would be so great. And the New York Times even was like, him.
Yeah, I know. I don't even want to think about it. I'm not superstitious, but enough
Whisper of a dream.
I know. I barely even want to whisper, but that would be amazing. And
Nice.
the cherry on the top of it would be Schumer like sweating in the last week making the decision to endorse Engel. If Engel goes down, Schumer, read the room, man.
So rough.
Schumer should have just endorsed Bowman. I know it's impossible, but imagine if he had. Anyway, yeah. So we'll see. But alternatively, imagine if next Tuesday rolls around and MCC beats AOC.
Oh my God.
Just done. Just done. It's impossible, but I'm done.
Not gonna happen.
Everybody, it's the end of the week, and you know what that means. It's time to take out the trash. For my garbage person of the week, I've chosen sort of a person, the CEO, but really a corporation, multiple corporations, exemplified here by AMC Cinemas, who have announced that they are not going to be mandating that guests wear masks as they reopen. So I'm going to just throw them right here, and then I'll explain. AMC, it won't be just them, so hold on a second, but yeah, they're not going to be requiring guests to wear masks, although employees will be required to. They're going to be performing temperature checks on their employees, but again, not on their customers. And that by itself wouldn't necessarily merit a story or even throwing them in the trash. But the fact that Adam Aron, AMC CEO and president, said, "We didn't want to be drawn into a political controversy. We thought it might be counterproductive if we forced mask wearing on those people who believe strongly that it's not necessary." The issue is that the coronavirus isn't interested in how strong your belief is. That's not how science works. And so as they reopen, and I understand they desperately need to reopen so they don't shut down. These cinemas desperately need to reopen. And it's not to say that they aren't doing other things to try to ensure that coronavirus doesn't spread as much as it might. They're doing lots of responsible stuff. But this has now been so successfully politicized by the right that some of the places where the most people will soon be congregating, in AMC, but also Cinemark and Regal, they're going to be encouraging guests but not requiring it, which means that there will be some spread of coronavirus that could be avoided. And the reason given, we don't want to get political about all this stuff. No, we desperately need to. Have you, I don't know, I'm sure, Brett, you've been watching. Florida just saw a record number of cases. On Thursday, 3,207 new cases, beating the previous record, which was on Tuesday, of 2,782. A big increase, like a more than 10% increase over the previous record day. That curve is going up. And this is how powerful people who are going to determine what reopening looks like are responding with. We'll do some stuff, sure, but we don't want to get political about it. The thing is, the death count is being affected by people not getting political. And so that's why AMC, Regal, Cinemark, you can end up in the trash for now.
I get it. It is impossible to go to a movie theater and have your mask on at all times because of the popcorn situation and the soda situation. Mm-hmm. I think that also, what are they going to do? They're going to have, I know at like, what is it? The ArcLight, they have people come in and look and monitor for sound, but looking at the audience, are they going to have, would they have monitors doing this? Mm-hmm. Being like, you get out of here. And then you'd have to disrupt the film to eject people for mask wearing. I'm not as,
wait, Brad.
I think this is a self-selecting situation. What?
You were trying to be very reasonable there in saying, well, you know, okay, how would they actually do it? Here's the thing. In the time between us starting the show, I was just informed via the chat, and thank you for that. AMC has reversed course. Will require guests to wear masks at its theater.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hold on. This has never happened before. Okay. AMC, thank you. Are you not reasonable? And am I not merciful?
And how effective is damage report that it actually single-handedly got AMC to reverse course. But I can't wait.
Hold on, Brett. That's a good point because it took literally seconds. So, Joe Biden, your lack of support for Medicare for All is landing you in the trash. Our lines are open.
My favorite person, I'm so happy you haven't done it yet, is Deborah Baber.
Oh, no.
Deborah Baber, a.k.a. Ventura County Karen. For those of you not familiar, I am of Ventura County. And Deborah Baber went to the Board of Supervisors meeting in Ventura so that she could protest this evil use of masks. And here's how it went.
I protest face coverings. I am a healthy American. I used to be free. I am not a terrorist. I am not Antifa. I am not a sex slave that wears masks. I am not into sadomasochism and bondage.
Prove it, prove it, prove. Have you seen that yet, John?
I've never seen that. That's insane. I am not a burglar. I am not Spider-Man.
She literally, the next line in that is, I am not a burglar. I'm not even kidding.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It is so thoroughly amazing that she's just like, I'm not into sadomasochism. Well, those people do it on purpose. Like, they're not being forced to do it. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to help you. Are you saying that, like, surgeons are Antifa? Like, I don't follow your logic here, Karen. But my favorite is when she's like, I am not into sadomasochism. We don't have evidence of that. We're going to have to see it.
By the way, I love that she had, like, 6 things, and it was, I am not a terrorist, tap, tap, tap. I am not Antifa, tap, tap, tap. The next one was, I am not a burqa wearer, but she didn't say that one. I think she even felt... That seems a little bit offensive. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to move to the sadomasochism
thing.
Let's
do the weird sex stuff. Somehow my creepdar is going off.
Oh my God. I have not seen that. Thank you, Brett.
Wait, there's more.
There's
John.
more? Okay.
The next one. Let's watch the next one where she lets freedom ring.
I am a proud Trump Republican, yearning to be free again. Who are you? Victim or victor? Shame on all of you. Let liberty ring. God bless America, land that I love.
Thanks, Brett. I hate it.
So not only that, but she sings as much of the song as she can. Mm-hmm. She gets the words wrong at some point. She goes, and it's fun to watch. You can watch Happy Half Hour or Made Show yesterday about that. But it's like she starts singing from the ocean to the prairie, and it's supposed to be from the mountain to the prairie, but she already dropped ocean, so she can't use ocean where it's supposed to. So the next thing she says, to the mountains white with foam.
And who brought the foam to the mountains?
Someone check on these mountains. What happened to the mountains? They're foaming. And I really like the idea that she's like, and when you watch her get it wrong, she realizes it, and she's not going to stop singing, so she just waves her arm uncontrollably to the mountains, white with foam. And she also wants to flex how awesome a singer she is, because
she's not bad.
Why wouldn't you?
She's pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, she's not bad. She is bad, but not at singing.
Not at singing. Do you have a third one?
She has a bell and everything that she raised. Here's the rest of it. Let's just watch the end.
Let's see this.
God bless America, my home, sweet home. Let liberty ring!
Thank you for your comments.
And it's Baber. Deborah Baber.
Thank you very much.
You should know better.
The next item is a Zoom.
It's perfect in every way. First of all, how should I know better? The only way I should know better is if you've been here a bunch of times. And it's even better if that woman does know better, but insists on saying it's Deborah Bieber. Here's Deborah Bieber. And just does it every time because she knows it gets under her skin.
Yeah.
Just the amount of time you have to spend at Kinko's.
To put all that together.
And then like to be wearing a Trump 2020 shirt, but also feel like you have to hold up a 2020 Trump sign.
We wouldn't get it, really.
Oh, I get it. You're a Trump Republican.
I think the greatest tragedy is that this woman could have had a great time and a great career in pageantry in general, but it's been co-opted now into this Trump thing, unfortunately. But she loves the performance. Go do a musical.
Dude, the best part of all of it, though, is the next item is a Zoom.
That is sad for these
just
times.
Like the nonstop, and you assume that like the next person is going to be the Zoom who goes, suck on my and choke on it.
Exactly.
I yield my time. You. Like,
anyway,
this is discourse in America.
By the way, Eric Blair put in a comment saying, I am not a cowboy driving the cattle in a dust storm. Because they would presumably wear a mask as well. Anyway, yeah, that was a great one, Brett. Good job. Man, the thing is, I bet there's people like that at so many of these meetings. Because those people need a forum, and they can't be stopped from going to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Okay. And she's from my hometown, by the way.
You should interview her, honestly. We should have her on the show.
If Cenk had won his election, she'd be a constituent.
Oh, my God. Okay, why don't we see Community Garbage Person of the Week? We've got formerly AMC, now replaced by Joe Biden. We'll give you an update on if he switches on Medicare for All as a result of TDR coverage. We have your pageant woman. And then, let's see, we asked the TDR community to vote. We asked just earlier today, because producer Angel forgot to post it, which actually makes her my garbage person of the week. But anyway, in the limited amount of time, we still got 4,000 votes. And those responsible for the recent lynchings across 4 states got 62% of the vote, which is, I believe, the highest percentage I've ever seen for one choice. Now, of course, we don't know the details on all of these, but it is an incredibly suspicious string of events across multiple states. And we also have Trump in second at 23%, the MAGA cult and people defending racist statues at 8%, Mitch McConnell, always a popular choice, at 4%, and Mr. White Blessing evangelical pastor Louis Giglio at 3%. I'm not actually familiar with that story. Do you know that?
He's the one who said it's in an attempt to rebrand white privilege in a way that he thought was acceptable to both white people and black people. He was like, I like to think of it as a white blessing. It's a blessing. Slavery was a blessing. Because when he's talking to like a black guy and he thinks he's really like, this guy knows what I'm talking about. If we just call slavery a blessing, it'll make everything okay. It did not. You should not try to call slavery a blessing.
No, you should not.
Ever.
I don't understand any of that. Maybe if they went to Kinko's and like mapped it out, maybe I'd get, I don't know. Joining us once again on the program is journalist, editor, and founder of DCReport.org, David K. Johnston. Welcome back to the Damage Report.
Glad to be here, John.
Glad to have you here. We've picked a good time. Donald Trump being president is always consequential, but there are a few periods perhaps where it's had the most impact than in the past few months. And we're speaking now as, protests continue. And we've had a few weeks of Donald Trump's reactions to the concerns about systemic racism in law enforcement. Before we delve into some of the specifics, I would just love your impression of how he and his movement have addressed the concerns that have been raised through these protests.
Badly would be a polite word to describe it. The fact is that the kind of police brutality that we had documented so thoroughly by a very brave 17-year-old girl who held her cell phone steady for 9+ minutes has been going on for well more than a century. Back in the early 80s, I wrote a lot about it in the LA Times, and it didn't change anything. And now that we have this evidence, and you are seeing majority white crowds turn out in many places, in towns that are virtually all white, people turning out and giving Black Lives Matter demonstrations. What's happening is irrefutable evidence has caused people to open their eyes Trump, however, can't change. Donald he's incapable of change. So his response to this has been, these people are looters, they're monsters. I need to be with law enforcement. He'll make a few statements to the contrary to muddy the waters, but his overall handling of this is, to call him tone deaf would really be to offend the phrase tone deaf.
Well, he got a lot of criticism when he initially announced that his first big protest, first big rally, I should say, first was happening in a time when it still doesn't seem safe to do that, but that he initially chose to do it in Tulsa on Juneteenth. That criticism led to it being pushed back a day, which is the sort of retreat that I have not expected from Donald Trump. But he is still going to speak at that rally. I'm curious about your impression of him changing the date, but also what you expect out of this first big rally back on the campaign trail.
Well, I have no doubt that Donald Trump was unaware of Juneteenth. That doesn't surprise me one bit. But his minister of hate, Stephen Miller, who's from Santa Monica, Stephen Miller knew perfectly well what they were doing when they came up with this, he and Brad Parscale. So the intention here was a dog whistle, and they simply, wanted to, again, muddy the waters by holding it back a day. Now, the growth rate of the coronavirus in Oklahoma right now is horrendous. In a single week, they've doubled the number of cases per day. The R factor is about 1.2. If it's below 1, the disease stops spreading. Above 1, it spreads, and 1.2 is a very high spread rate. So we're going to, in about 2 or 3 weeks, see a big spike among Trump supporters who go to this indoor event in coronavirus cases. And I hope people don't die from it, but hopefully his followers will then begin to recognize how dangerous and foolish holding rallies like this is.
Yeah. I guess zooming out from Trump, hypothetically, if any legislation is passed to address the concerns of protesters, it would have to get past Trump. As you pointed out, there's been so much just undeniable footage of police brutality, and it seems like it's breaking through in a way that it hadn't to the popular consciousness. Do you think that the Republicans will agree to some sort of bill with actual substantive changes? And if they do pass something like that, is Donald Trump, especially in the approach to the general election, is he likely to sign it, knowing what we know about his base?
I don't think until we get a new Congress, we're going to see any substantive reform. And let's remember, the problem here is not police policies, it's culture. It is police departments who have a culture of not telling on other officers when something is wrong, and of absolute mistreatment of Black Americans. And the Republicans have a problem in that, for decades now, the Republicans have told us that they're the moral people, right? The moral majority was the phrase. And what we're seeing as they surrender to Donald Trump is the Republican Party consists of moral jellyfish. They're blind, they're spineless, and they're simply adrift in the waves of chaos emanating from the Trump White House. They're not going to do anything that really matters. And of course, much of this requires state legislatures to act and local governments to act. And there are some basic reforms. And one is failure to intervene when an officer is out of control should be both a firing offense and a criminal offense. Convenient loss of your signal on your body cam, and lots of police departments don't have body cams, and your dash cam should be punishable up to losing your job. And when we get those kinds of reforms, maybe we can begin to undo the culture, and maybe we can begin to move to having fewer police on patrol, which is just a waste of money, and more police delving into financial and other crimes because they're forensic accountants, they understand business, things like that.
Speaking of forensic crimes, at least loosely, I know that you had an article, I believe last week, talking about one way that hasn't been covered very much, that the Trump administration is preying on especially low-income minority communities. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, remember, Donald Trump promised that he was the champion of the forgotten man, but his education secretary, Betsy DeVos, who's a multi-billionaire, has taken the side of the bankers against the brains, against the students. Now it turns out the various laws we have to protect people seeking a mortgage from redlining, which is the practice of saying you're not going to make loans or only make them on onerous terms in neighborhoods where people are Black, brown, or in some cases low income. in turning people away for credit cards, charging them higher rates for auto loans. We have laws prohibiting all of that on the basis of race, sex, religion. They're not enforcing the law. They're not doing anything at all about it. And that's because Donald Trump, his slogan really, his dog whistle slogan really is "Make America White Again." And people need to recognize that. And of course, people who want that, people who really want, blacks and browns and women to know their place, they're going to continue to love Donald Trump.
Let's turn now to the election. I know you just recently wrote about the possibility that Donald Trump, despite what the polls could say, and the polls seem to be moving, at least nationally, away from Donald Trump, that he could very much still win. Could you lay out a little bit of why you believe that that's still a significant threat?
Well, let's remember that 11 million more people voted for candidates other than Donald Trump: Hillary Clinton, Jill Stein, and Gary Johnson, and some other minor candidates. I'm sure Donald will lose by at least 16 million votes. And the latest polling, by the way, works out to be he loses by 16 million votes. But we don't elect presidents by popular election. We elect them through the Electoral College. So all he has to do is win the right states. So look what's going on. Clear voter suppression in Georgia, where people in white, affluent Republican neighborhoods just walk up and vote, and people in neighborhoods where people are black or believed to be connected to the Democrats, their machines don't work, hours and hours of waiting in line. Refusal to move to voting by mail, which Trump and his family and his press secretary have all done, but he says it's full of fraud. And by the way, Donald's vote is fraudulent because he listed his address as Mar-a-Lago, and there's a court order he agreed to. He can't claim Mar-a-Lago as his residence. So all Donald has to do is suppress enough votes to win in the Electoral College. And I'll make you a prediction right now. On Election Day, there are going to be white militia standing just past the legal limit for electioneering to intimidate people at the polls. Not everywhere in the country, but in some key places.
Potentially Georgia, as a state
Georgia,
that seems like it might matter.
Florida, Michigan, places where Trump will probably lose the popular vote if we had a full and proper vote count. And of course, win or lose, Donald Trump is going to continue to be a problem for us. If he loses the election, he's going to scream fraud all over the place. The one thing I am not worried about if he loses is what happens on January 20th. If Trump doesn't leave the White House, the Secret Service will frog march him out of the building. They take an oath of office to defend the Constitution, not to follow the orders of the president. Military grunts take an order to follow the orders of the president and defend the Constitution, but our officers only take an oath to defend the Constitution. And they have already indicated they don't support Trump at the very highest levels of our military leadership.
As the past few months have developed and we've seen how Donald Trump responded to the protests, as we talked about, but also the pandemic, I've been pretty astounded by what he's done and what he hasn't done. And I've often wondered what your reaction to his strategy was going into a general election that we've now passed, at least officially, about 120,000 deaths from coronavirus. That would seem like you couldn't possibly win after presiding over the biggest loss of life domestically in our history. What do you think about that? Do you think that he and his movement and the right-wing media have successfully inoculated his base from caring or taking seriously the pandemic? Were you surprised by the lack of seriousness that he portrays himself as a defender of the people, this strong man who's going to keep people safe, but he clearly didn't? What do you think about that?
Well, he's beginning to see weakening of support among people who have some understanding of science. And Donald obviously has no understanding of science. I mean, all you had to do was hear him raising questions about injecting cleansers and putting lights inside your body and not knowing a bacteria from a virus to understand that what I've been telling people for years, Donald is an ignoramus and appallingly ignorant, is quite true. The question is in the key states, the states that are going to matter in the Electoral College, how's he going to fare? Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Those are probably going to be the key. And if the death rates go up high enough, presumably there will be some effect from this. But so far, a lot of his supporters, you can see by their behavior, they don't get the science, they reject it. go to the crazy extremists like the woman on CNN who went, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus and therefore safe, to recognize there are a lot of people who they just don't get the science and they don't see it as affecting them. So if the death rate goes up among his supporters, maybe that will have some effect on them.
And, we got a preview late last year and into the beginning of this year of the sort of campaign that Donald Trump had planned if Joe Biden ended up being the nominee. The world is a fundamentally different place in a lot of ways than it was back when he was hatching that scheme. And it looks like Biden is now actually going to be the nominee. I'm curious what you think about what his plan was for going up against Biden versus now what the campaign is going to look like, and how the fact that Biden is the candidate might compare to the way Trump ran his campaign against Hillary Clinton. Do the specifics of Biden, do they give Trump a bit of an advantage this time around, or is he going to find Biden to be a more difficult candidate for some reason?
Well, Joe Biden, who is Mr. Washington establishment, even though he's deeply connected to blue-collar people on an emotional level, it doesn't have all the emotional baggage that came with Hillary Clinton. I mean, beyond the misogyny, a lot of people just didn't like Hillary Clinton. Donald managed to pose as a Christian, even though he said his whole life philosophy is one word, revenge, which is anti-Christian, and that he gets pleasure from hurting other people. It said this in writing, 6 pages in one of his books. And Hillary Clinton carried a Bible in her purse and prayed with her staff every day. That didn't get through at all. Biden, it seems to me, is going to suffer mostly from the malapropisms, which are the residue of the stuttering he had as a child that he came over. So he was supposed to one day say, a truth over lies, and he said truth over facts. And they're going to hammer him with things like that. If he runs Kamala Harris or Val Deming as his candidate, they will find some dog whistle to try to delegitimize them, but that's only going to work with people who are serious racists. I'll be surprised if Trump agrees to debate Joe Biden. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to see. Will he debate him? And my guess is, nope.
See, publicly, he's actually saying he wants to change the process so that there will actually be more debates against Joe Biden. Are you asserting that Donald Trump is being dishonest in some fashion?
If Donald Trump were honest, I would find that astonishing. I wrote a piece when it went up today that pointed out that Donald said after the election that I had tried to stop him and I failed. And I said, that's one of the very few things Donald has ever said that's 100% accurate. He may have debates or he may not, but this is going to be a really nasty campaign. If there's any skeleton somewhere in Joe Biden's closet, and this is a family man who, remember, every night he could, which is almost every night, took the train back to Delaware, about 2 hours, to be with his family, and then came back in the morning. They're going to try, though, to find some way to dirty him up. If he runs with Kamala Harris, they're going to make a big thing out of the fact that in her 20s, she was the mistress of Willie Brown, the mayor of San Francisco and later Speaker of the California Assembly. Willie's talked about it. Willie's wife has talked about it, but I think they will try to make an issue out of that. I don't think that's going to particularly be damaging. But you're going to see a really vicious, nasty campaign. I'm more worried about access to the polls, people being removed from the voter rolls. Now, in New York, where I live, in California, where you are, there's no issue. But in the key states, especially Ohio, which has a long history of voter suppression, even though it's a northern state, that's going to be a really big concern. And people who care about that, they should be, if they can travel, making arrangements now to go to some flippable congressional district, plan to arrive on Sunday, stay through at least Wednesday, do whatever the campaigns there need locally to get people to the polls. If you're a lawyer, take the day off. Whether you support or don't support Trump, as a matter of law, you should be there to ensure that people are not denied their right to vote.
Yeah.
And that's going to require a huge crew of volunteers on election day. So I think more focus needs to be spent on actually getting people registered, getting them to the polls, and then getting their votes counted than anything else. Because if enough people vote, Donald doesn't just lose, he potentially becomes the biggest loser in American political history, which is where he belongs.
That is an appealing prospect, so I think we'll stop there. I also agree with you, by the way, that this is likely to be an incredibly dirty election. I mean, 2016 was. This seems like it's going to at least match it. So hopefully we can occasionally touch base as you continue reporting going on to that election. David K. Johnston, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.